Hey everybody, welcome to the first Monday show for March of 2021. We got a game to give away, and this month we're going to talk about a little bit of RPG goodness and a little ways to bring in some extra fun into your RPG gaming. Come on back after the break. Hey everybody, welcome to Author Shelf Board Game Reviews. This is a tabletop channel all about tabletop gaming and the tabletop gaming hobby itself. Now we're going to go ahead and do this really quick with a quick game and giveaway, because I know that we're going to be talking about all about RPGs in this episode, and not everybody's interested in RPGs, so let's go ahead and cover the giveaway really quick. So the giveaway game was the game of Deep State, and this is going to come with the Global Conspiracy expansion and all the wonderful Kickstarter exclusives, and we have a winner for the game, and the winner is going to be Joe, who's winning a complete copy of Deep State plus the Global Conspiracy and plus all the Kickstarter exclusives. There were so many entries for this contest. I could not believe how many entries there were. I thought I'd just be able to pull out like a 20-sider and roll it and figure out who the winner was going to be. Nope. It took random.org to go ahead and figure out this winner, because everybody won this game, and I guess it wasn't too obtuse of a clue to give away. You all figured it out. You all sent the email, and there was tons of entries, but there can only be one winner. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the mailbox this week. I've already sent you an email. You should have this by now, and if you don't, check your email, because you are a grand winner. Actually, that won't work, because I think there are 4 people named Joe. If your name is Joe and you got an email from me, then send me your address, because I'm going to be shipping out this game to you so you can get this game to your table and have a heck of a lot of fun with this game. So that's it for the board gaming portion of this month's video. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of RPG goodness this month, because that's what some of you actually requested, and hey, I take a request, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, in the last month's issue or episode of the first Monday show, I talked about some various different ways that I actually play my RPG games and make my RPG gaming a little bit more exciting, and try to get ahead of the doldrums of the things where it feels like you've done this all before. You know, the gaming up the times you've had where it's felt like we've done this before, repetition, and it kind of gets boring. Basically, it looks something like this. You as the DM, you sit down with all your at the table with all your players, and they did either one of two things. Either they made all the characters, and they kind of had a rough idea of how they're going to play their characters. They all brought their characters to the table, and they kind of threw together some backstories or some reason why they all happen to be together. And the adventure usually starts something like this. All of you are in a pub. You're all having a pint together when suddenly a dwarf runs in the room, runs up to you very quickly with a whole bunch of panic in his eyes. He looks dirty, he looks filthy. And of course, that's always going to be interrupted by the first player saying, "A filthy dwarf? Are we in Kryn?" And you're going to say, "Kryn? Where did you get Kryn out of this?" And of course, they're going to say to you, "But they're filthy. Are they a gully dwarf?" Why Kryn? Why dwarves? Why? Well, because Kryn is coming to 5th edition. It's not Kryn, and it's not a gully dwarf. This, of course, is always followed by the murder hobo at your gaming table who's going to look at you and say, "Can I kill it? Can I roll a 20-sider? Can I get a crit?" And you're going to say, "No, you can't crit it." "Well, you can crit it, but you need to roll." "I'm going to roll the dice." Stop rolling the dice. It's a dirty dwarf who's running to the bar. And of course, this is always followed up by the other player at the table going, "So why are we in this world? What's going on? Can you tell me why we're here? What's our background? Do we know what's going on? What's the world like? Can you tell me more? What's going on?" Which is going to be followed by you just going, "Okay, fine. You're in the middle of a field and Minotaur attacks you. Roll some dice." And of course, that first player's going to go, "I told you we were in Kryn. It's a Minotaur." So what I hope to share with all of you today is a good way to bring in a zero-level campaign, which is going to solve a whole bunch of these problems and make your life as a DM so much easier. Now, why a zero-level campaign? Well, a zero-level campaign actually has a whole bunch of advantages, because basically when you play RPGs, you're going to have basically 2 ways you're going to start the game out. Basically, you're going to send an email to everybody and say, "Hey, everybody, we're going to start a brand new campaign on Monday. Let's all get together. Need everybody to roll up some characters, bring their characters to the table. That way we're all ready to play on Monday." Or, well, of course, that's if you play on Monday. A lot of us play on Saturday, which is a much better day to play. Or what you're going to do is say, "Hey, everybody, come on by the house on Saturday. I got some pizza. We're going to sit down. We're going to roll some characters, and we're going to start playing some RPGs this Saturday. Show up around 1 o'clock. We'll go to maybe about 5 or 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock, depending on how everybody feels." Of course, both these ways have their advantages and their disadvantages. Having everybody make with their characters events ahead of time, make sure that when you get together on a Saturday, you can actually play. But then again, you have a lot of disadvantages, such as the players don't know the world, because you want to keep a lot of surprises for the players. Players are going to have a little bit not matching backgrounds. Players may not even have a really good cohesive party. You may have somebody who said, hey, I just want to play a rogue. And somebody's going to say, well, I want to play a rogue too. So I guess we just have two rogues in the party. You're not going to have a lot of cohesiveness there. So that's kind of where things fall apart when you do it that way. Your other option is just have everybody get around the table for a game day. Everybody sits down, everybody starts rolling up the characters, everybody talks. Maybe you'll get some backgrounds going together. Maybe somebody will get some cohesiveness of the party members. But then you're going to sit there and go, well, everybody, it's actually 4 o'clock. We have like maybe an hour and a half to go. So I guess you're all sitting in a bar and a crazy dwarf runs through the door and they're filthy and they run up to you. Yeah, you know where this gag is going. I'm not going to do this gag one more time. But basically, those are kind of the advantages, the pros and the cons of both those methods. So what I like to offer you is a new way to start your gaming, a new way to have a little bit of fun that's going to make it a lot easier on the players and also on the DM. And I like to call it just a zero-level campaign. Now, I'm not going to pretend I invented this whole thing from scratch. I've been playing lots of RPGs over the years, and I basically have I've stolen. That's basically how all of us do this when we play these RPGs anyways. We steal like Shakespeare and we turn that into a really cool adventure, except instead of being on stage, we're in the middle of a jungle and it's a prince who is falling in love with this something or other and you have your adventure going that way. So we steal quite a bit. That's the best way to do this, but we make alterations so it's not quite that obvious. So there's a whole bunch of ideas I've managed to take over the years. I'm kind of incorporating this into what I like to describe as a zero-level campaign. Now, it's going to require a little bit of work on the part of the DM, but what campaign doesn't require a little bit of work on the DM, but it's also going to make a lot of things easier for the DM. It's going to allow your party to be a lot more cohesive when they come to the table. And here's the best part of all of it. You send an email to all your friends, you send a text message to all your friends, you call up all your friends, say, hey, everybody, show up on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And by about 1:10, we're all going to start playing D&D. Everybody's going to start saying, what, should I make it my character? You're going to say, nope. Bring a piece of paper and a pen and some dice, and you'll be ready to go. Let's show you how it's going to be done. Now, the first thing to understand about the zero-level campaign is the idea of the zero-level campaign is basically to combine two things into one session so everybody can get out and start having fun a lot quicker. First of all, we're taking all the character generation and the background story and the world generation, and we're working on that all as a cooperative storytelling experience with the players and the GM. And the reason why we're going to do this is it lets the players feel like they have a vested interest in the world, which is already one great bonus just for doing this by having the players help create the world. I'll explain to you how this is going to work in just a second. But it gives them vested interest in the world. It allows them all to create cohesive backstories because we're going to go through the backstory all together. And this is also great because it gives you as the DM, without having to make a whole bunch of extra work on your part, you're going to hear the backstories right there. And you as the creative DM, you're going to go, oh, really? Start taking notes on your keyboard. Take notes on your keyboard. Because then you start having the backgrounds of the players you're actually going to make while we're going through the zero-level campaign. And then you're going to have a long, cohesive story where you can actually pull from that stuff in the background, and you as your devious little self as a DM, you can bring some creative storytelling and make sure you have some leverage against the players. We've all been there before as a DM where we're going, man, if I had some leverage on this player to make them do what I need them to do. I know, I'm going to kidnap their cousin. What do you mean you don't have a cousin? You have a cousin. Oh, your character story says you were abandoned as a youth. Always. Anyways, so that's the whole idea of this, is just go ahead and fix all those problems and help create some really good creative storytelling and some great fun, and also do it all quickly, all at the table. And the best part, you can do this all 10 minutes after everybody's sitting down at the table. So the first thing you're going to do once everybody shows up for game night is everybody's going to eat pizza. We're going to joke, get it all out of our system, because heck, that's what we always do once we all sit down for the gaming table. Make sure that we have lots of caffeine, or don't, if that's what you like. But the first thing you're going to do is once everybody's ready, you're going to give every single player a standard character sheet. And the only thing they're going to do with their character sheet is they're going to take it and they're going to pick a name for the character. They're going to simply pick a race for the character, and then they're going to start with 7 hit points. Now, the reason why every single character is going to start with 7 hit points is because, like I said already, at the end of this zero-level campaign adventure, every single hero is going to be second level. And 7 hit points is pretty much the minimum amount of hit points any character can have by the time they reach second level. Now, of course, it's possible to have a little bit less, especially you make yourself a second level wizard and you have a 8 constitution, but actually the way this is going to work out, it's not possible. So that's the reason why I picked the magic number of 7 hit points. So it basically covers everything. And again, you're going to understand how this all works as I explain more and more about this. Once everybody's picked their name and the race and start with the 7 hit points, every single player is going to start with one single item of their choice. Now I want to emphasize it's going to be an item, not a weapon, not a piece of armor. It doesn't have to be any special thing. Now it can be those things, but it has to be one special item, 25 gold piece value or less, and every single player needs to pick that one item. And then once everybody has sit there and picked what that item happens to be, can't be a magical item unless you're feeling really generous, but I highly recommend not doing that, especially for this. But as you do this, have every single player write down why they have that item on their character sheet. They don't have to share this yet, but write down exactly why they have that item, where that item has come from, and what that item specifically means to the character. Next up, all the players are going to assign their stats to their individual heroes, and every single hero is going to start with a 10 in every single stat, except for one stat, and we're going to figure out exactly what that stat is as a group, but kind of as a surprise. And the reason why we're going to do this is it kind of allows the players to not metagame as much, but also allows a little bit of creativity among all the players, and also has a little bit of variety, and also flow into the backstory. And we'll explain all this, how this all works here in just a second. But basically, every single player is going to put a 10 in every single stat, and then every single player is going to take a d6 and they can put that d6 down on the table and they'll put their hand over it, covering up one of the 6 D faces, and they're not going to show it to the other players. Once every player has picked their D6 face, we're all going to reveal at the exact same time, and depending on what face that player reveals, that's the stat that's actually going to start at 12 points. So the way we're going to number this is we're going to do strength, intelligence, wisdom, dex, con, and charisma. So for example, one player happens to have their d6 showing the number 3 when they reveal their d3 or their d6, they're going to start with a 12 in wisdom. If they happen to be showing the 6 on the face up, they're going to start with a 6 in charisma. If they have a 1 when they show the face up, they're going to start with their strength is going to be a 12. So basically whatever face is showing up, that's going to be the stat that we're going to start at 12. So basically we're going to have 5 stats at a 10, and then we're going to have a single stat that's actually listed at number 12. So now that we got our 5 stats, we got our name, we got our race, we got our stats, and that's basically all we really need to get the ball rolling and start having some fun. Now that all the players have their starting statistics, again, it's going to be 5 10s and one single 12, players are going to start gaining extra skills and extra statistics based on the decisions they make and based on everything that's going on in the game. Basically what you're going to do is the players are going to get a total of 14 stat points and up to 4 to 5 skills for the character, and their actions and decisions they're going to make are going to influence where their stats are going to go up, and this can be controlled by the GM. Quite simply, as the GM, you're just going to take out a piece of paper, and you have a room for 14 check marks for the hero, for the statistics, and you have a place for 4 to 5 check marks for all the skills that they may possibly gain. And you're going to set them up with situations, and every time these situations, how they interact with these situations is going to affect how their stats are slowly raising and how their skills are slowly raising. So for example, let's just say that you create a scene that they have to make a decision space, and the scene is that they find a wounded subject on the ground, and you say pretty much, well, what do you do? Well, the players decide that they're going to carry the person away to safety. Well, that could be a strength thing because they're going to carry a very heavy person. So give them a point of strength. Let's say they decide that they want to perform medicine on the person to go ahead and heal them up. Well, this is going to do 2 things. You're going to say, okay, do you want the skill in medicine? If they say yes, they're going to take the skill in medicine. And since medicine is a wisdom-based skill, they're also going to take a point of wisdom gain. Now, the trick here is they're never going to gain a total of more than 14 statistic points. They're never going to gain a total of more than 4 to 5 skills. But no single skill can ever start at higher than 15 plus a racial bonus. So for example, if they have a racial bonus of +2, that means no skill or statistics can start higher than 17. But you as a GM need to create these decision spaces that's going to help them get the abilities to interact with the world, build their background, and also build up their characters. Another good example is, let's say they happen to enter a smithy where they hear a fight going on. Let's say the players run into the smithy because there's a fight going on, but they don't have any weapons picked out. You're simply going to look at them and say, well, what kind of weapon do you grab? If the player says, well, is there a rapier? Say, sure, go ahead and grab a rapier. As soon as they grab that rapier, rapier is a finesse style weapon. Give them a point of dexterity. If they say, well, I grab a big old long sword and I grab a shield. Sure, take a point of strength. What if they take a huge great maul or something that's really heavy that takes somebody who's really has a high constitutional wield a weapon like that? Give them a point of constitution. And basically you're going to dole out these things through the decisions they make and slowly build up their characters, but you also build up their history. And the cool thing is you're doing all this just from sitting down at the table, not spending hours creating the character. You're actually building your characters as you play. So this is going to require a little bit of work on the part of the DM, but again, it's going to be interactive between all the players, and you'll see how more interactive this can definitely get between the DM and the players. The only thing that you have to do as a DM is just have a piece of scratch paper or use a laptop, whatever you like. And again, you just need to have no more than 14 tick marks for every single hero and no more than 4 to 5 skills for every single hero. Once a player has spent all their tick marks on their stats, they're not going to gain any more stat gains, but they still gain skill gains and vice versa. So let's say if they got all their skills and get stats, whatever, you understand what I'm saying here. But just make sure nobody gets more than a total of 14 stats and no more than 4 to 5 skills. Keeps it pretty average and keeps it pretty much along the lines with your standard player's handbook classes and all your races and your character creation. Now that you understand the basics of how the system is actually going to work, you basically, as a DM, just need to set the stage and let the players start interacting with the world. Just as a DM, start with a very vague description, and you want this to be vague because you want the players interacting and giving feedback, because they're going to help build the narrative of their backgrounds that they're playing through right now to help create the characters that they're going to play through the campaign. So you're going to start with something very simple. Just as a DM, maybe you'll start with a world building saying, standing hard against the river Oregon, Asheville is a seemingly very tranquil and extremely prosperous town on a well-traveled trade route. So I've given them a slight location for the town right now. I've given them a name of it, and I kind of give them the idea of what kind of land this happens to be, so they know how they want to start building their characters. Then I may go on and describe it as saying something like, the ruler is Lady American. She's a paladin of renown who has lived a long life full of many battles. The town itself has a population of about maybe 1,000 people. It's broken up mainly between humans, half-orcs, halflings, and dwarves. Most of the people in this town have a kind of range anywhere from lawful neutral to neutral good, maybe chaotic good, but that's the most average range for most of the residents of this town. They do have a wide variety of races in this town, so there's a couple different main languages spoken in this town, ranging from common to orc all the way to halfling. Now, why do people speak orc? Well, that's something for the players to figure out, because this is something you as a DM have already built into the little prequel adventure going on right here. But you're going to continue to go on and explain just a little more and just give the players at this point a chance to start interacting with the narrative of the story. Because you as a DM have already set a rough idea of what is about to happen, but now give the players a chance to interact and help build up that world. So you're going to pick some people of note, at least 1 or 2 people of note that the players are going to help you create right here and right now. The trick is you already have a bad guy picked out among these people of note, but the players don't need to know that, and they're going to help build this bad guy. Again, they're helping with the world building right here. So for example, you may say, hey, look at one of the players and say, I need a priest of Chantia. Give me a race, give me a description, and give me one characteristic that's really interesting about this NPC. Let that player do that. Go ahead and write it down. Again, this is a mutual world building, helping you get into the game much, much quicker and helping you have fun with the players. Look at another player and say, hey, this town has a crotchety old alchemist. Describe him, give me his race, give me his name, and tell me one interesting fact about this NPC. And while that player is describing all this, you're taking notes and you're writing all this down. And then finally you may look at another player and say, hey, there's a halfling trapper in this town. Why don't you give me their name and tell me one interesting topic about this halfling trapper? Now you're keeping that nice bend going on with all the players, but what you haven't described, and this is you as a GM can make stuff like this happen, what the players may not know is that this halfling trapper is actually secretly an evil cultist priest of Shar. So even though the players had the feedback and their action of helping build this character, you actually had them build the villain for this adventure, and they don't even know it yet. Next up, the players are going to help you build locations of note within this location, within this town that all the players are working together to build as a cooperative group. The cool thing about this is the people of note that you've already created may help you build up these locations. That's why we're going to do the people of note before we do any locations of note. And you're basically going to look at the players at the table. Again, you can pick one player and say, hey, there's an inn in this town. Go ahead and name this inn and describe to me the proprietor of this inn. You may look at another player and say, hey, there happens to be a really cool shop in this town. What is it? What do they sell? And describe the proprietor to me. Look at another player and say, well, every single town has a blacksmith shop. What's the name of this blacksmith shop? Who runs this shop? And what is one of the things that is so well known for building or crafting or creating? Or you may even look at one of the players and says, there's a secret underbelly in this town. What is that secret underbelly? And then let them say, hey, maybe there's a gambling den in this town, and maybe they want that gambling den because they're playing a rogue, and that's going to help build the background they're already working towards. So they're giving you feedback, and again, while they're giving all this feedback, you're taking notes because this is the character's background in this wonderful prequel story that you're building. And the nice thing about this is since you've already built some of the NPCs with some of the players, you can even go up and say, hey, that crotchety old alchemist, what's the name of his alchemy shop? Let's go ahead and create that, and you just write it down. You're good to go. And then you get to move on to the next part of all this. Next up, you're going to have one of the cool and very interactive and fun things about doing this is you're going to have some town secrets. Now, before the players gathered for the game, obviously you had a rough idea what the adventure is going to be. You had a rough idea who the bad guy is, but you don't have an idea of what everything else is because that's what you're building all as a group. So what you're going to do before the players show up is you're going to take a handful of 3x5 cards or whatever you want to do. You can even do text messages if that's what you want. and you're going to have a whole bunch of secrets. And I usually recommend about a half dozen of them because you want a couple secrets that are true, a couple secrets are false, but you want to shuffle up and just randomly hand them out to all the players. So I would probably suggest if you have like 4 players, do about 6 secrets. If you have 6 players, do about 8 secrets. Again, you want about half of them true, half of them false, and then you're going to shuffle them up and just randomly hand them out to all the players until every single player as you're handing them out says, this is a secret you know about this town. Don't share it with any other players yet. You can maybe share it when we're done with this intro adventure. But until then, this is a secret that only you know. Next up, you're going to have the players in player order narrate where exactly they are in this little town that you built up, why they're here in this town, and then what they're doing exactly right now at this very moment. And that's very important because right after all the players have done this, we're going to get into things immediately. And then we're going to start basically with a lot of the adventure and a lot of the fun and a lot of the interaction pretty much right there exactly at that point. So give the players a chance to help create the world right here. Let them name places they may have been in the past if they want to do so. It's not mandatory at this point. Let them name the place they are currently at right now. So for example, if somebody says, I'm at the blacksmith shop, and let's say the blacksmith shop wasn't one part of the original locations that you picked earlier, just say, okay, what's the name of this blacksmith shop and what does it look like inside? And give them the chance to interact with this. Let them name the places as they do this, and also let them say where they are right now at this very moment. And then as soon as a person says right where they are, stop and move on to the next player. They're going to do the exact same thing. Once they say exactly where they're at, you're going to tell them stop, and you're going to move on to the next player until every single player has basically gone through that whole process and had a chance to say exactly where they are right at that very second. And this is going to create situations where players get to interact and help mold the story and help find each other eventually in their hour of need. You know, kind of beating will get away with the whole thing. Okay, you guys all know each other. You're all in the bar and the dwarf walks in on you. We're trying to get rid of that and have some nice grand interaction between all the players and create that nice cohesive story. And now comes the fun part, because now we're going to throw all the players into the chaos exactly where they are right at the points where they said their heroes left off, and that's where all the fun is going to begin. So let's say, for example, 2 of the heroes said that they're in a pub, and you now at this point get to say, hey, okay, you're all in this pub having a drink. Both of you just get picked for a contest. What is the contest that happens to be that you just happen to be picked for? Well, let's say one of the players who happens to have a little bit of a strength points, because that's the stat he picked in the beginning, says, let's say I got picked for an arm wrestling contest. You say, oh, interesting. Okay. You belly up to the table to have an arm wrestling contest. Simply look over at the next player in line and say, okay, your friend there just got picked for an arm wrestling contest. How did you rig the contest? What exactly did you do to rig the contest? And if they look at you and say, that's a good idea. I secretly drugged one of his drinks of the person he's arm wrestling so that person loses out on it. Say, okay, interesting. Go ahead and take the alchemy skill, and since alchemy is also based on wisdom, go ahead and take a stat in wisdom gain. Let's say the player says, nah, I don't like that. Let's say I actually just purchased something and I happen to have it on me, so I'm going to do some sleight of hand to go ahead and sneak it inside the person's drink. And you say, okay, that's an even better idea. Go ahead and take a point of skill and sleight of hand, and then take a point of dexterity. Again, you as a GM, you'll go ahead and track how all this works. Keeping track of their skills and their stat gains. Let's say as another example, one of your players says they happen to be at the blacksmith shop, and you tell them, well, you walk out of the blacksmith shop and you walk around the back side of the blacksmith shop where you see a couple of subjects happen to be shaking down somebody for some money. How they interact with that scene is going to affect whether they're going to get any dexterity gains, any charisma gains. Let's say they try to talk those people out of trying to shake down the person, maybe a charisma game. Let's say they go ahead and try to sneak up behind them and try to pickpocket the proceeds after they take the proceeds from the person they shook down. And this is going to be the next very, very important thing that is going to be really cool about the zero level campaign idea. If at any time any player wants to use an ability that belongs to a specific class, let them do it. But if they decide to do it, you have to let them know they now are going to gain 1 level in that class. Now remember, as I said earlier, this zero level campaign idea is going to let all the players get up to level 2 by the time they get to end of this low 0 level campaign. So if they take any class-based skill, give it to them, but explain to them they are officially going to have 1 level in that class, and every single player gets to do this 2 times. So if both those times they pick class ability specific to one single class, awesome. That means when all this is done, they're going to be level 2 in that class. But let's say they do 2 different things from 2 different classes. That means when all this is over, they're going to be multi-class. Let's say they may end up attacking somebody with a sword, and during that sword fight, let's say afterwards, they decide that somebody's really injured and decide to heal somebody. Well, give them a level of fighter, give them a level of cleric. Again, you have to be very lenient, but a little bit firm, because you're trying to create this wonderful environment where all the players create this interactive backstory for all of their players. Of course, one final point to understand here is if players manage to make it through this whole background 0 level adventure without using any specific class abilities, then at the end of that, they're going to pick 2 levels of whatever class they decide to. Or if they only pick 1 class ability one time in the whole entire 0 level adventure, then they're going to become level 2 in that specific class. So that's somewhere where the DM needs to be a little bit lenient, but make sure they're tracking what everybody does and give everybody a chance to interact with the story. So now you're wondering, how does all this work? Let's go ahead and throw those together and just create a really cool example for you. So the town of Ashfall I described earlier with the paladin who was the lord of the place, and I gave a description of the town, the inhabitants, the multiple races, and a very rough background for the town. Well, what I created for this little mini adventure before the players even showed up is this background. And let's go ahead and go give you a good idea of how you can use this background to create this 0 level adventure. Unknown to the players, Ashfell is a town that was built over an ancient burial ground that was once a sacred location dedicated to the priest or to the goddess Shar, who's the goddess of death. An upstart priestess of Shar has learned of this and is in an effort to curry Shar's favors, working on a ritual of unlife to animate all the dead beneath the city. She is a new resident of the town here for only a few months and is using the guise of a trapper to come and go as she pleases. Remember, this is the halfling trapper that the players help create. Unknowingly, they help you create the villain for the 0 level adventure. Today is going to be the day that her ritual will reach fruition as all the dead are about to rise. Now, the great thing about this is you see that you really don't even need a really super epic story, because the players are going to help you build this all together in this nice collaborative group generation of this adventure with all the players. So now that you understand exactly how this has happened, you can use this information to create all these scenarios and all these little mini scenes between all the players where they get the chance to level up their heroes, get their statistics, and get their skills, and get their backgrounds. This is going to turn into grand background. And the awesome thing is all the players are going to manage to meet up through the adventures that are going to happen here. And I'm sure you can see what kind of scenes you can be creating here. Just for example, let's say the player says, one of the players says they happen to be at the stables. While they're at the stables, they're going to see the ground separating in front of them. Out of the ground is going to rise up some kind of undead creature. Or maybe we can have a situation where, let's say somebody is in the blacksmith shop, because they say they happen to be in a blacksmith shop, and undead is going to come to life and is going to attack the blacksmith. Or you may have a scenario that happens like that. Or maybe one of the players is going to hear a scream outside. They're going to run outside and they're going to see a townsfolk is being attacked by an undead. They have a choice if they want to heal that player or that NPC, if they run out there and attack that skeleton, or all these different things. But you can see you're going to create all these little scenarios and all these little mini scenes and situations. Every one of those scenes and situations is going to be a chance for all the players to interact with the scene, and you're going to make them make the decisions. You're basically going to set the scene and ask them what do they do with that scene, and their interaction with the scene is going to affect their statistics and their attributes and other skills that they gain, and you're going to help level them up. And again, by the end of this, they're all going to be level 2 characters. Now at this point you may be asking, why is this designed to get all the characters level 2? Well, let's be honest, every single first adventure in Dungeons & Dragons is meant to get all the characters to level 2. Basically, it's only 300 experience points to get from level 1 to level 2. And that's basically, let's be honest, a couple of goblins and maybe 1 or 2 orcs killed to get all the players up to level 2. So we're going to create all these situations with all these players and all this interaction, which is give them a chance to get up to level 2. And then after you've finished this whole thing, you're going to close everything out with the scene closer and move into the real campaign or real adventure or whatever you have planned for all of our players. Whether it happens to be a box adventure with something such as Rime of the Frost Maiden, or maybe Out of the Abyss, or any one of the various different box adventures, or whatever homebrew you happen to play on or happen to have planned, you can move into that. And the great thing is you have these backgrounds for all these characters, but you're going to close out the 0 level campaign with something similar to this. Fast forward a couple months and all of you are at, and then you're going to describe the location that's going to begin the new campaign for all the players. And you're going to look at every single one of the players and say, what one event transpired between escaping from the city, being overrun by the undead, and coming to this current location right here. And again, you've built up this total background for all the players to work on and create together. Now, the great thing about this is you as a DM, you really don't need a lot of background to start things. All you need is an extremely rough idea and a very rough overview of the location where the player is going to start. You can take things as simple as say, I have this idea for a town. This is what the town looks like, and this town is going to be ridden and overwhelmed with a plague of some kind. Or you can take another town and say this town used to be a pirate haven, and now it's turned itself around a little bit, but it still has a seedy underground, and now it's about to be attacked by orc raiders. or you can just use what I just already described in this ongoing video, just saying a undead plague attacking a town. It's very easy. You just need this very rough idea of this idea for this background, and then you just have to put the players in these situations where it's going to help them create their characters. And that's going to wrap up the first Monday show for March 1st of 2021. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to get to them as quickly as I can. You also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. I'll be sure to answer your email as quickly as I can. If you enjoy this channel, you enjoy the content, think about supporting the channel over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/OTSBGR. Just one simple dollar in the tip jar can help me cover my costs and help keep the channel growing strong. If you enjoy this video, if you enjoy the content, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.